what to expect at the tax sale. Is that where, we're on module number 4. That's where we're supposed to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to launch off into some things to look out for, some things to be in tune with. Probably a good place to start is to, after you decide on your county, is figure out if you need to register for the tax sale. Most counties do have you register. Sometimes you just put your name and address down there. Sometimes they want a pint of blood and a copy of your driver's license and all that kind of stuff. But you want to comply with their requirements, whatever that may be. Find out exactly where the auction will be held. It could be held in a courtroom, under a tent, in a conference room, in the collection office, in a common auditorium. I have attended tax sales in all of those places. And the overarching idea here is the less surprises, the better. The more prepared you can be, the more at ease you're going to be in participating in the tax sale. Now, this one's going to be kind of common sense. Choose your seat strategically, your seat in the room, in the place where you're going to attend the tax sale. Who can tell me why that might be important?
So you can see who's bidding?
So you can see who's bidding? Yes, that would be important.
They can see your bidding.
Yes, they can see me bidding. Is that what you said? Yes. That's exactly right. If I'm sitting up on this row, if I'm the auctioneer and somebody's sitting on the front row and they're bidding, do they know what's happening behind them? No, they don't. If I'm sitting on the back row back there, am I aware of what's happening in front of me?
Yes.
Yes. I have a much better chance of being aware of what's happening in front of me. Well, what could be happening in front of me? Well, there are other people who are bidding, obviously. They are engaging in various body movements. They're telling me nonverbal things. Hopefully, they're not giving me nonverbal gestures, but they are telling me things. Are they nervous? Are they anxious? Are they raising their hand? Are they reluctantly raising their hand? Are they, or bidder paddle, depending on what they're using to bid? Are they apologetically bidding? Are they bidding confidently? Are they squirming in their seat? I'm going to know all that if I'm sitting in the back or near the back of the room. I'm not going to know any of that if I'm sitting in the front. So, if you've got a lot of money and you don't care, come sit on the front row. They got to play your game. But if that's an issue and you want to be more informed about the dynamics of your environment there, then you need to think about those things when you decide where you're going to sit. Make sure that the list that you're using, the list that we've been talking about that you've constructed, make sure your list is the same sort as the order in which the sale will be conducted. Usually, the sort of the sale is going to be the same as the advertised list. Okay? I'll tell you a quick story. This is probably 15 years ago. We were gearing up for what we knew was going to be a really big auction in Birmingham. And we had 4 or 5 corporate investors come in, and I knew they were coming. Each one were loaded. They were going to, spend $3 or $4 or $5 million a piece. And this one guy walks up, and he is white as a sheet. And these guys will come, and they'll have a list that thick. But the reason it's so thick is it'll only have about 5 properties on a page because it'll have a little color picture out beside the analysis, which is on their list. And so they're not just looking at a single line; they're looking at multiple lines with a picture. So a lot of them would have that kind of report from their due diligence. Well, this guy has one of those. Only problem is it's in a different sort than what we're going to do the auction. And some wires got crossed, and so he's brought $2 or $3 million to the sale, and the sale starts in 30 minutes, and he doesn't have a synchronized list, or he doesn't have a list that's in the same order. So he's pretty upset. And it wasn't our fault, it was his fault, or it was his company's fault. They didn't find out how it was going to be sorted, they just assumed. So I wound up bailing. The end of that story is his company resorted it, they emailed it to me, and I printed it out for him, just a one-line deal, not with all the pictures. And I got a very pleasant Christmas gift that year. But anyway, the point is that would have been a complete disaster for him. But make sure it would seem like a little thing, but if your list is not in the same sort, it's almost impossible to participate. Make sure you can hear the auctioneer well. Most of the auctioneers are just kind of rank and file employees. Sometimes it's the elected official themselves. If they want to use it as kind of a little PR thing, they'll do that. But usually they're just up there talking. So you need to make sure that you can hear them. From a little bit higher level, it's very helpful. I mentioned this a while ago. Try to understand the motives of the auctioneer. Look for ways to make their job easier. There's nothing, I speak from experience, there's nothing more frustrating when you're trying to keep this thing going, keep the auction going, and somebody's being kind of mousy with their bidder paddle, or they're not really sure, okay, plus 1,000, plus 2,000, okay, plus 3,000. That's very frustrating to the person trying to conduct the auction. So, if you can establish a line of sight with that person, make sure, you're on their wavelength, you're in their purview, clear view there. That is very important. And, if you've ever been to an auction, whether it's a tax sale auction or not, if you buy something or buy 2 or 3 things, you're going to, whether you like it or not, you've established a relationship with that auctioneer. And if you've been successful one time, the chances are you can be successful a second or third or fourth time or however many times. So you want to capitalize on that. That's just kind of common sense, but a lot of people kind of get caught up in the fervor of what's going on there and they forget those little basic things. So try to look for ways to make their job easier. Be gracious to the folks running the sale. If they do something for you, tell them thank you. That's, again, just everybody appreciates that. It's kind of funny because when in Birmingham, we'd have these auctions, you'd have guys coming from all over the country. People from up north, people from California, and they'd come in there and, they're going to tell us how they do it in the Midwest. And we didn't really care because they're in the South now, baby, so we're fixing to do it our way. But some of them kind of got that and they understood and they just jumped right in there and however y'all do it, that's how we're going to do it. That's the way you got to be. So in that sense, it doesn't matter what you think. You kind of got to play their little game, and if they have little nuances, you're going to have to play along. But always be gracious and be thankful. That's a good mantra anytime. If you're issued a bidder paddle or bidder number, do not be shy with it. Be sure to hold it up and don't hold it halfway up and don't leave it up. Again, back to the idea, I want to make the auctioneer's job as easy as possible. So I don't want them guessing if I'm bidding or not. I want to be very clear. Speak clearly when you bid. Make sure that you're not mumbling. Again, kind of common sense. Discern who your competitors are and what they are after. This is very important. There are basically 3 kinds of bidders that may be present. One is a local bidder with just a little bit of money, or what I would call small money. This person probably just wants to bid on a few properties. If you've ever been to the Jefferson County sale in Birmingham, they have the portion where you can bid on 5 or less properties, if that's all you want to bid on. So you get to go at the beginning of the sale instead of waiting till day 2 to bid on what you want to bid on. That's who, this kind of person is who they are catering to when they have that provision. So this person usually just wants to bid on a few properties. It may be family property or relatives' properties. And typically they don't have a lot of money. They're just after a small number. Ways to be competitive. It's pretty easy to be competitive with a local bidder with not much money. You can either wait them out, you can go head on with them and try to outbid them. If you have more money, that assumes that you're not a local bidder with a small amount of money. Usually that's me though. So, usually they're there to get just a handful and then they're gone. So it's important to know who those people are. The number 2 kind of bidder is a local bidder with big money. And in my opinion, these are the hardest guys to figure out. There's 3 different kinds of bidders that I have up here. This is number 2, but this is the hardest one to figure out. Let me give you an example. I've had the benefit of the last 9 years of being asked to conduct the Montgomery County tax sale. And there's a gentleman there. He's an older gentleman, and he comes to he's been at the Montgomery County tax sale every year. And I think he lives in Watauga County maybe. But anyway, he comes and he actually goes head on with a lot of the corporate investors. And sometimes he beats them. He's got a ton of money, and he's kind of an old farmer looking guy. And he can't half hear anymore, so his daughter comes with him to kind of interpret and keep him on course. But he will smoke out all the other local buyers. And only occasionally does he let one of them buy. So he's the hardest one to crack. The best hope you could have in a situation like that is hopefully you've been nice to him in the hallway and he remembers it. And that might be the bigger challenge, him remembering it, and that he would have mercy on you and let you have 1 or 2. Another thing is sometimes the big money people, this is true with the corporate investors too, we'll talk about in just a minute, but occasionally they'll run out of money before the end of the tax sale. And if you can outlast them in terms of time, a lot of times there's opportunity at the end of the tax sale. He wants to bid on a lot of properties, and a lot of times he kind of wants to do it just to kind of, I hate to say this, but it's kind of a pride thing. And so, it kind of blows his dress up to do it, for lack of a better term. Ways to be competitive, I just talked about that. Try to outlast him, try to be nice to him, see what happens, but that's the toughest one. Number 3, corporate bidder with big money. And you're thinking, well, these are the toughest people, or this should be the toughest situation, but really it's not. It's the second, in my view, second biggest problem or second biggest challenge. This person wants to bid on a lot of properties, but their approach is more structured. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, they're hired guns. I know, I've been one before. And they're going to have a certain profile of property they're looking for. They're going to have some marching orders from corporate telling them these are the boundaries, these are the characteristics of properties we want to bid on. And for example, they may have the following characteristics. They may say, okay, we're not going to bid on anything that's under $100,000, period. We're not going to bid on any condos. We're not going to bid on any mobile homes. And we want to emphasize single family. And we're not willing to go over 22% excess bid. So there are your marching orders, work the list, and that's what we're going out. That's what we're going with. So that would be an example of what a corporate investor might come to the auction with, those kind of marching orders. Some might say, okay, well, we're only going to do commercial. Others might say, we're going to do single family, and that's it. Some may say we're going to do single family and multifamily, but no commercial or no vacant land. There can be any combination of any of those characteristics. So, but especially on a sale that's going to last 2 days, it would behoove you to kind of learn just from listening what these guys or girls are looking for who represent these corporate investors. But those are the kind of things. So if you can figure out, hey, most of these folks are not buying condos that are under 100,000. There's a lot of condos for under 100,000, market value under 100,000 in the Birmingham division, in Bessemer too, probably. So that creates a little gap there that you could perhaps jump on. Same thing with mobile homes. Another thing is, as I mentioned earlier, is vacant land. There may be some vacant land. Most corporate investors say absolutely no vacant land whatsoever. Well, what if you know that there's a 3-acre piece right beside Walmart that somebody hadn't paid their taxes on? That could be a good opportunity. I've bought a couple of huge pieces from the state. I didn't know they even went through the taxes. I missed them myself. And I got to looking, and there's an 85-acre piece of property out in a good area of the county. And I'm just thinking, as long as it doesn't have a stack of old tires on it, that's probably a pretty good deal. Or as long as it's not a toxic waste dump, it's a pretty good deal. So I do a drive-by. It's got trees growing on it. It may have a fence around it. I don't need to know anything else. So just because it's vacant land doesn't make it a bad deal. I wouldn't make that my primary focus, but it is a way to kind of come in the back door when we're talking about being competitive with corporate investors.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
In line of that, part of the due diligence of doing a homes on vacant land have you run into any issues with using drones to be able to?
That's a great question. I have not. I have not.
Like for trespassing sakes, sometimes people get all upset about drones. So.
That's a great question, and I don't know. I'm sure there are laws or provisions that govern drone use in general, and I'm sure that would apply. But I don't know what that. I haven't talked to anybody that's done it. That's a good question. Okay, we just talked about ways to be competitive with corporate bidder with big money. One of the best ways, as I touched on just a second ago, is a lot of times they'll have a set dollar amount, as I mentioned, in terms of waiting them out. So they may be, there's no feeling like that feeling of having 3 corporate bidders sitting in front of you, and at the beginning of the second day, one of them says, well, I got a plane that's leaving in 30 minutes. I got to go. See y'all later. Well, that's good news because he's gone. And the next one says, well, I've spent all my money. I'm going to go. And so then the universe is getting smaller in terms of my competitors because they got other schedules. They're running out of money, or they spent their quota or whatever. And so that's going to leave me a spot there near the end of the tax sale where I'm going to have a lot less competition only because I decided to stay there longer. So that happens a lot. Now, it just so happens that in Birmingham, the municipality that is at the end, let me back up. The tax sale now in Birmingham is conducted in district number order and then parcel number sort within the district. The district represents the municipality that the property is located in. And so it starts at 1. It goes through 47, I think, in Birmingham Division. For example, Homewood would be 12, unincorporated area would be 1 and 2, City of Birmingham would be anything in the 30s, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it just so happens that at the very end of the district list is Pinson. So you see a lot of tax sales in Pinson are to small investors and not to large investors, because by the time they get to Pinson, the big investors are gone. So anyway, I just think that's kind of interesting. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Where can you get a list of what the codes,
It's online. If you go to the Jefferson County website, you remember the screen I had up, the green screen? I think it's on the left-hand column. There's some selections, and I think one of those is municipalities or district numbers. I can't remember what it's called, but I'll double check on that. It would be it's the one that also has the millage rates on it. I think they're on the same list, district number and millage rates. Can anybody, and we're to the question part of this, as far as sizing up your competition, understanding the bidding process, anybody have any questions about some of those items? Yes, sir.
Yeah, logistically, if I have a list, let's have 30 properties to bid on, and one of them is this one parcel that nobody wants to bid on except this one guy, he signed up for the 5. Am I still gonna be able to compete against that one guy who selected the 5 or less?
Okay, here, it's a good question. The 5 or less thing can be very tricky. And when I was there, I thought it was a great idea. Now that I'm sitting in the audience, I think it's a terrible idea. What happens, as you may know, is at the beginning of the sale in Birmingham, they hand out this piece of paper and it has 5 lines on it. You basically put the 5 that you want to bid on, and they take those first at the beginning of the sale. So what happens, if you got a list of, say, 10 that you're after, you got to be listening to see, since they're not going to pick yours in order to start with, you got to be listening to see if they call out your parcel number that's on somebody's list of 5. And they move pretty fast, and so you kind of got to be paying attention and really on your toes. If you're not, they'll sell it to that person who has pulled it out to begin with, and it'll be on your list. So you've got to be comparing your list to whatever they're pulling up on the screen in the 5 or less, and be ready to compete against that person who has called it up. Now, and I hate to tell you all this, but I was one of the ones that thought about the 5 or less, about making it that way. And the reason we did that was to let people who just wanted to bid on a few properties, to clear them out. Yeah, before we started going through that was the genius behind that. So what wound up happening is, instead of saying, okay, you bid on your 5, you need to leave, now what's happening is you bid on your 5 and you get to stay. So you got a lot of people who have plenty of money to spend at the tax sale, and they're just trying to get in their 5 up front. So that's what we see happening a lot, and that's kind of not what the purpose was for. If they in fact bid on their 5 and then hit the road, that would be great, but that's not what's happening. So to answer your question, you got to pay attention and make sure that yours on your list don't come up in the 5 or less part. Otherwise, you're going to need to be prepared to bid on them.